Nearly 20 years after his last adventure, Indiana Jones finds himself captured by Soviets looking for mysterious, powerful, ancient crystal skulls and must team up with a new group to recover the skulls before the Soviets. This is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Hi, I'm Anthony, your host.
And I'm Mark, your other host.
And this is Buddy Movies, the place where buddies talk about movies.
So, the first thing we need to do in this episode is point out...
Oh, yeah. Take a good look at Mark, folks.
Camera, thanks to my partner in crime, Anthony.
You are in full glory 1080p.
Yeah, I don't know if I like it.
It'll grow on you. It's very wide angle. Yeah.
I think I need a better angle than this, but this is what we're going with for this episode.
Yeah. You can experiment with it.
Yeah.
But
people can see how I actually hold myself now instead of just, this little block of me.
Right.
They can be like, how fat is Mark? Oh, now we know.
Hey, you know what? You know what I did recently? I started a new TV series, one that you've been watching, The Chosen. Watched the first episode. Oh, what were you getting else?
I thought you were going to say Scrubs. I was getting so excited because I thought you were going to say Scrubs. And you know what? I shouldn't have had that reaction to The Chosen. But since I had Scrubs built up in my head, I was now like...
Yeah.
And then you said Chosen. And I was like, I forgot what that show was for a second. Chosen. Yes.
What do you think? First episode. I really liked the first episode. Like it immediately got you interested, and everything about it. Technically speaking, story wise speaking, everything. That was very intriguing just from the first episode. I
love that in the first episode. I mean, like all you know about the show going into it is, it's a series about Jesus,
right?
And in the first episode, you're like,
where is he?
Where's Jesus? The whole time
he shows up in the last
2 minutes.
He shows up in the last 30 seconds. Yeah. Which was a great entrance though for him. I'm excited to see where everything goes with it. And you said
they have a great cast too.
Yeah.
I mean, solid people in there.
And so I only saw the first season on. Where is it? Peacock? Is it on? I forget which streaming service I watched it on.
I watch it on the Chosen app. So there's a Chosen app. It's free. They don't charge anything for it, and it can stream to any device you have, anything that you stream on. They put a lot of work into that, and there are 2 seasons on there.
Okay, because I watched it on.
Finished the second season like a week ago, or a couple of weeks ago.
Gotcha.
My niece and nephew, they didn't realize it was a free series, and they paid to download it on Apple or something like that. It was I was like, no, it's a free show, but whatever. I mean, they do make money off of it, and the money does go straight towards making more seasons and stuff like that.
Okay.
The app has a lot of more background information, and they actually have a ticker on the app saying, we are funded through this episode of season 3, stuff like that. And then it's you can donate to get this episode fully funded, stuff like that. So, but they do make a point of saying hey, this is free. If you don't put anything towards it, that is perfectly fine. If you want to, though, it's here, Mm-hmm. And then they have merchandise as well. They have t-shirts and sweatshirts and hats and devotionals and, all the typical stuff you would expect a Christian thing to have.
Right.
So,
because I watched it through Peacock because I have a subscription. Well, my parents have a subscription through Peacock, and I mooch off their login. The point is, they only had 1 season of it on Peacock, so that's what I was wondering. So I should just go to the Chosen app, and they will have 2 seasons.
Yeah, the Chosen app is just easier. I find it to be more efficient than any of the other places.
Okay, that's good.
I don't think season 2 will come out on any of the other places for a while, actually.
Yeah. Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only new thing I've started recently.
I got back into Scrubs this week.
I kind of figured when you texted me. How many seasons
kind
is
of
that? You said it was eight or nine, or there's eight, and then there's the ninth.
it's debatable. It's debatable.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. Anybody who's coming into it now would look at it and say there's 9 seasons. But I watched that show live when it first came out, and there are only 8 seasons. They had a series finale after the 8th season. The first 7 seasons aired on NBC. Then there was the writer's strike, which happened during the 4th season of The Office. So the 7th season of this happened at the same time as the 4th season of The Office. And NBC decided not to pick the show back up. So ABC rescued the show, let them finish out their series with the last season. So they have the 8th season is on ABC. So it's slightly different format, which I didn't realize how much the stations control the format of the show.
Yeah.
So that was a nice learning thing. But of course, ABC made this investment into the show. They didn't want it to just finish up the series, you know? So they made a spin-off show called Scrubs Med School. And it literally said it, and I think it still shows it on the DVD. I could be wrong, or streaming, or wherever you get it. And the opening title is Scrubs Med School. And it has a couple of the actors from the original series who are now teachers at a school, at a med school. So they're teaching there, and, you know, JD and different characters pop in, you know, from the series, from the other show, and guest star a little bit here and there, but they're not the main characters, you know. And then that only lasted 1 season before it got canceled because it was kind of terrible. It just didn't have the same dynamic. And I think they tried to rely on the old characters too much. Like they have too many guest appearances throughout it.
Gotcha.
But when that flopped, they literally rebranded it, packaged it in a like 9-season DVD set of Scrubs the series.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Scrubs is 8 seasons. I had it all on DVD. I don't know if I still do, actually. I had all 8 seasons on DVD. And that 8th season, the way they ended is just so perfect that it's like, how dare you try and add this on to the, you know what I mean? It would be like if, okay, you've seen the series finale for The Office, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Imagine they came back and just continued the series with Jim and Pam being gone and Dwight now running the office and like a completely different cast in there, you know?
Yeah.
With a couple of the other characters, and then said, oh yeah, this is The Office season 10. It just wouldn't work, you know? And that's literally what they did with Scrubs season 9. It was not meant to be season 9. It was meant to be season 1 of its own show. But since it flopped, they rebranded it. And now
just try to get
you got new people thinking that it's season 9 and it's not.
Yeah. Is it? I guess I really don't know anything about it, but one of my former coworkers, Barb Toledo, she knew how much I liked The Office, and she said, since I like The Office, I probably like Scrubs. Does Scrubs have like? Is it style like awkward humor? Is it mockumentary style? Like, I really don't know anything about it.
It's not mockumentary style. It is single camera.
Okay.
So you don't have like an audience or, you know, the 4 camera angles and stuff like that. It's all through the viewpoint of one main character, JD, and he's an intern starting at a hospital. And, you know, basically like the experiences of him and his fellow interns. And of course, as the show goes on, they grow, they become residents, they become full-fledged doctors, and things like that, you know.
Okay.
But it's got a huge cast of characters. They aim to be kind of like this live-action Simpsons, is what they said, where you had a reoccurring characters over and over and over again. So a lot of the characters on the show are reoccurring, and it's because they're actually like crew for the show. Like the cameramen and the sound guys and different people play different characters on the show, which is how they ended up having this huge cast of extras that just appear over and over and over again all throughout the seasons, you know. And the creator of the show, he also made the show Spin City. So you have a lot of the people from that show guest starring on it. It's such a, that was what The Office became for me. Like I was watching that show on repeat all the time. Yeah. And I've watched probably almost as much of The Office. I think The Office probably finally has surpassed it in the amount that I've watched it. But yeah, that show was nonstop going. I mean, and it helped that when I first started watching it, it was also on cable. It was in syndication already, so
Oh god, yeah.
you were literally able to like turn the channel for a solid like 3, depending on the night, sometimes like 4 hours, and just watch different episodes of Scrubs from different seasons. And yeah, it was
wow, great. Nice. And as far as streaming service, like what network was it on?
See, that's the thing. I'm watching it for free on Prime right now.
Okay, but it's on Amazon.
It switched networks halfway through the series. It was on NBC, and then it
switched to
became
ABC.
Switched to ABC. So I'm not sure who has the actual streaming rights for it.
Yeah,
because I didn't find it on Hulu because I looked for a while there, and I don't think it's on Peacock, which would be NBC.
Right.
And Hulu is like ABC Disney stuff, you know. So, but I know it's on Prime right now for free. I don't know if you have Prime.
I do. I do have access to Prime. Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's good to know. And they're 20-minute episodes.
Yeah, they're just typical sitcom 20-minute episodes. I mean, they're longer seasons, like The Office, you know, where you have like 20 plus episodes per season.
Right.
Except for their 7th season, which was shorter because of the writer's strike.
Mm-hmm.
And that season is literally like, it's not like season, I won't say it's like season 8 of The Office, you know, how that season's kind of despised.
Yes.
But it kind of ends up with that feeling just because the stories they were going for got cut short. And then they got picked up by ABC, and it was like a year and a half later. You know, like all the actors are older. Some of them had moved on to other projects because they didn't know where their show was, what was happening with their show. But they got them all back. They all came back. It was just ended up being this season that kind of sticks out there as like, man, what happened here? Is this actually happening? Like, and then they have the season finale for that is this episode that's just kind of shoehorned in there that seems like it was a concept episode that they never really fully fleshed out. It's got like terrible special effects in that episode.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with it, but it's a fairy tale episode. Like they have because he narrates the show.
Yeah.
Like the whole show is narrated through JD's point of view. And every now and then they'll do like homages to different things. So they'll have like this extra side thing going on, and you go into his imagination a lot of times. So it'll like suddenly cut and you'll be in his imagination and then it'll cut back and you know, they have fun with that and you get to see a lot of things, or it'll cut to a memory, or it's a good show. You should check it out.
Okay.
First episode is a pilot. So it's still, it's a little different. But actually, the hospital for that is in season 5 of The Office. The hospital they use for the main part of the show.
Okay.
When she has her pregnancy test.
Yeah.
At the volleyball game and everything.
Right.
That whole set there is literally the Scrubs set, just from like a slightly different angles. Yeah. But I could pick it out because it's NBC. It was all NBC at the time. Yeah. They literally took a hospital and remade it, an old abandoned hospital, and made it into where they film everything. So like the one floor was where the cast got together, like their trailers. And then the first and second floor was where they would film things for the show.
Yeah.
I think it was like the first floor was the hospital. Second floor was the apartments and, you know, like homes and stuff like that. And then the third floor was like their trailers where they had their own places to themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I just may check that out, especially since it's shorter episodes. Like, I don't like to pick up TV series that are, 40, 45 hour long episodes because those are harder to get into, but 20 minutes, that's easily doable, So
before you know it, you've watched like 3 of them. Like the other night I was at work and I was just doing paperwork because I was there on an overnight and I was staying up later than I probably should have. And I just had it playing in the background while I'm typing away and stuff. And before I knew it, I was on like episode 8. I was like, dang.
Oh man, just flew by. That's when you know it's a good show or a show you like. Is when it. I mean,
I've seen it so much that I can see it without seeing it. It's just like The Office.
That's what The Office is for me. I can just, if I just listen to a podcast, I can just watch the episode just by listening to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've just spent a lot of time talking about something other than Indiana Jones.
So let's get Indiana Jones here, folks. This is what you came here for. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the fourth, but not the final installment.
Because apparently they're making another one.
They are making a fifth one with James Mangold directing, coming out, I believe, 2022. That at least is the plan currently. I heard Harrison Ford got injured on set, so production has been halted for right now.
It was him who got injured. I wasn't sure if it was him or somebody.
It was him because he likes to do his own stunts, and he's 80 years old at this point.
Yeah,
and he got injured. It's insane.
He was too old and 10 years ago.
In 2008. This was released May 22, 2008. Written by David.
2008? Oh,
it was.
Crap. I thought it was 2012. Wow.
No, this movie's already 13 years old at this point. This was written by David Coep and directed by the one and only Steven Spielberg. And the story is by his longtime collaborator and friend, George Lucas, and also Jeff Nathanson.
That explains so many of the problems.
So, because of George Lucas there, I thought you might say something like that.
I love George Lucas. He is such a visionary person.
Yeah.
But he is terrible with directing, and he can't really write. He's literally
just
a producer.
Story.
He is a great producer and concept guy, but you don't want him directing and you don't want him writing.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to write here just for the note for the screenplay. David Coep, some of the other movies that he wrote were the first two Jurassic Park films and the first Mission Impossible movie, as well as Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man. Yeah.
So what did he do wrong here?
Well, see, again, the story goes back to the story was developed by George Lucas, and he was taken from that story. So I think it just kind of points back to Lucas here. This movie did not get any nominations. It's the only Indiana Jones movie in the franchise to not receive any Oscar nominations.
None.
I know. Shocking.
Wow. Not really that shocking, but
just completely shocking.
How can they get none? How can a Steven Spielberg movie be made and get none?
Right. That's what I was thinking.
It's different tones than the way we're thinking about it, though.
Right. This is, to date, the most expensive Spielberg movie ever made with a $185 million budget. And that was...
What did he spend it on?
That was $2008. I was thinking of that. I'm like, it has a good many visual effects, a lot more CGI than in previous Indiana Jones movies, but still, $185 million. I know Harrison Ford's paycheck could not have been cheap, but $185 million still sounds a bit expensive. But ended up grossing $790.6 million worldwide on that $185 million budget. So I'm just going to jump right in here on the story, my pros, and then I'll let you get to all your cons for the movie. This movie, it gets criticized. Some criticism I think is, legitimate and warranted.
There are some that are not.
There are some that are not, though.
I will give you that.
Yeah.
I remember people complaining about Russians instead of Nazis, and I'm just like, 1950s, Nazis were gone.
This is the 50s. They were gone by then.
I remember some people complaining about the aliens rather than, like some crazy artifact. And I'm just like, except, again, 1950s, 1960s, Sputnik, aliens were like the thing.
Yeah.
So no, I don't really give into those criticisms of the movie. So
okay, yeah. That was one of the things I was mentioning here. The story is often criticized for involving aliens, and the common argument is that the use of aliens is just very unrealistic and too far out for an Indiana Jones movie. But if you look about it, think about what actually is realistic in these Indiana Jones movies. Yes, they have the spiritual artifacts, which they have all these supernatural powers, which I can get on board with because, as a Christian, these are religious artifacts that had these supernatural powers. And that's what I loved about the first and third movies is that they, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail were actual, Christian artifacts. And I loved that about that. That was the MacGuffin for those movies.
They literally had an immortal soldier guarding the Grail in the third movie.
Last Crusade.
I'm sorry, I don't really think you can say, oh no, that's realistic for an Indiana Jones movie, but aliens aren't.
Right. Yeah. I just don't know why people think all of a sudden, aliens are unrealistic. These are all, in the end, these are sci-fi movies. These have been sci-fi movies from the very beginning. So, I don't know why everyone has a huge problem with Aliens, especially considering one of my central argument here is that this is not the best movie in the franchise. There's no way I believe that. I don't think anyone actually believes that. What I am arguing is that I think it's better than Temple of Doom, because Temple of Doom involves a cult. Its central plot is this underground cult where, as far as realism goes, I think that's farther out than Aliens, to be honest. I mean, this underground cult where you have voodoo dolls, Indiana Jones being controlled by a voodoo doll. You have a guy who gets his heart ripped out through telekinesis. That's farther out, in my opinion. I mean, someone can argue, Aliens are still farther out, but still, Temple of Doom was extremely far out. I think you make that argument versus the Aliens argument, and there's not a whole lot of, I still think Temple of Doom was a farther out movie than Crystal Skull. I kind of do, actually. And what else do I want to say here? Yeah. And, would I have chosen Aliens? I probably would not have chosen Aliens, to be honest. Like, I would have liked to have seen a different artifact, another spiritual artifact. But when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what's other spiritual artifact would I have chosen that, is as interesting as the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail? I'm not really sure what I would choose, but I would have liked to have seen another spiritual artifact, because those are just very interesting. And to be honest, I say this to my coworkers. I think Indiana Jones is at his best when he's fighting Nazis. Would it have been a retread if he faces Nazis for a third time? Maybe, but who still would not want to see that? I think everyone would still want to see that. I would have liked to have seen him face Nazis once again, because they're just such great antagonists, and they're...
He's just kind of getting a little too old for that, though. I mean,
maybe
the Nazis were around for like the 30s and 40s. Okay,
in the 40s.
I know there are like neo-Nazi groups, neo-Nazis. They're not like Hitler.
Right?
Trying to find all these different artifacts. Red Skull, that type of stuff.
Yeah. And I will bring up here a bit of trivia here that ties into that. Originally, for this movie, Indiana was actually going to be up against the uprising of former Nazis, like ex-Nazis. But Spielberg, this was after, he did Schindler's List, way after Schindler's List, and he just felt that he could not treat the Nazis in any light manner after directing Schindler's List. And Harrison Ford expressed what you had just said. He felt that, quote, they had just plumb wore the Nazis out. And so then George Lucas felt that the 1950s decade would have to take into account the Cold War. And whenever he heard that Joseph Stalin had been interested in Crystal Skulls, he ended up putting the Soviets as the script's villains and ended up developing the Crystal Skull storyline. So, yeah, this movie's set in the 50s. It involves aliens. It involves Crystal Skulls. Is it far out? Absolutely. Is it still hugely entertaining? In my opinion, absolutely. And I will get into why exactly right now, folks. So... yeah.
Why?
I will.
Am I supposed to ask why?
Yes. Why is this movie so entertaining? First of all, the characters themselves. This movie, unlike Temple of Doom, this movie brings together a bunch of characters that actually have connections with each other. You have Shia LaBeouf's character, Mutt Williams, who turns out to be Henry Jones Jr., basically. He's Indiana's son. So there's a connection there. You bring back Marion, his first love interest from the first movie. That's a huge deal, I think. You bring even his relationship with Mac. He has this, even though Mac, in my opinion, is a pretty weak and terrible character, he still is Mac's a former associate and friend of his. And then you have Oxley, who is another former, I believe, a college classmate of his. So he has relationships with 4 different characters in this movie. And I think that's hugely important as far as the dynamic between the characters as they're, in this group together. And it just makes things a lot more interesting when you have Indiana have actual relationships with these people. And also Spielberg, we've talked a little bit in the past about his life growing up. He came from a broken family. His parents got divorced early in his life. And he often puts like a broken childhood or divorced parents into his movies as an element into his movies. And he does that once again in this movie because, Marion and Indiana, they end up like they have they don't actually get they don't get married, but they have this kid, Shia LaBeouf's character, and so it's a broken family, and so Shia LaBeouf's character, I keep saying that, just Mutt. I'm gonna go call him Mutt. Mutt Williams. He didn't grow up with a father, and so that's I like that Spielberg once again puts a little bit of his own autobiography into this movie. And what I do also love, George Lucas. This is actually George Lucas's idea to make Mutt Williams Indiana's son. He wanted to give Indiana a rebellious character to bounce off of, reasoning that, quote, he needs to be what Henry Jones Sr. thought of his son, and the curse returns to Indiana in the form of his own son. He's everything a father can't stand! Exclamation mark. So I thought that was, actual good idea by George Lucas to kind of bring full circle what Henry Jones Sr. was experiencing and bring that to Indiana in this movie. And it also just lends it to some good humor. I think there's a lot of good humor spots in this movie, where Indiana says, it's okay if you didn't finish school, if you want to work on motorcycles all your life, that's fine. Just do what you love. And then the second he learns that Mutt is actually his son, he asks Marion, well, why didn't you make him finish school? And it gets all upset there. I love that complete 180 turn. So yeah, there's also just some great humor spots in this movie that I think, in my opinion, land. Comedy's obviously subjective, but I think they land. There's perhaps some unintentionally funny stuff in this movie, like
I think
Tarzan Shia, in the jungle. But that kind of, it was, I rewatched that. I was like, yeah, that was not a good decision there to have
it's
Tarzan.
Not good CGI.
Shia.
It's not even a good concept. It's literally just like.
And that was one of my complaints.
Spielberg came up with this?
It was one of my complaints with this movie. This movie has so much more CGI than the previous Indiana Jones sequels, because
when your action star is 70, you kind of have to.
I mean, he still ended up doing a lot of his stunts, but it's just, there's just so much more CGI. I will say, though, that jungle scene, even though it does get crapped on a lot, it was actually shot in a jungle, in an actual jungle. There wasn't actually that much green screen involved. There was green screen involved for some additional elements and for some digitally adding some things, but it was actually shot in a jungle on location. So I really appreciate that, because honestly, as crazy and far out as it is, I think that it is dare I say, a thrilling action sequence. I really do, because you're moving through the jungle, right? You're moving through the jungle. All the while you have this MacGuffin, bouncing around between different parties. So you're doing two things at once. Characters aren't just fighting for the sake of fighting. They actually have something that they're fighting for in the midst of fighting themselves. They're doing kind of two things at once. And I think it's an entertaining action sequence. I kind of do, actually. I really do. When you see Shia LaBeouf straddling, two cars as he's sword fighting, like I honestly find it really entertaining. I do. And yeah. One thing I did want to mention about Mac's character, I mentioned he's a weak character. Like, one thing that really bothers me is the fact that he betrays Indy twice in this movie, and Indy somehow doesn't see it coming. Like, the guy is just literally out there for money, and it's clear from the very get-go. And he betrays Indy twice, and somehow Indy doesn't see it coming. He's a really dull, boring character. I'll be completely transparent about that. Not a great character, pretty poorly written. But, yeah, I think we also need to get the elephant out of the room and address that fridge scene, the infamous fridge scene where Indy survives a nuclear bomb by barricading himself inside a fridge, a lead-lined fridge, though.
Okay, now about that, I love the fan theory behind it. Have you heard the fan theory behind it?
I have not.
Okay, so in The Last Crusade, did he or did he not drink from the cup?
Did Indiana Jones? Henry Jones Sr. did. I don't think Indy did, though.
I thought Indy had to beforehand. before he gave it to his dad. Like, he had to take it and drink from it.
Yeah, oh man, it's been a while since I've seen it. Did he actually? I don't think he took a drink from it. Oh man, I have to verify that.
Yeah,
I don't.
I didn't.
He chose the. Yeah, he chose the cup. Wait. I think you are right. Actually, I think you are. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think he did drink because he had to test. He had tested out before he gave it to his father. Because the guy, the immortal guy, then says he chose wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the reason he actually survived in that explosion was not because of the fridge. It was
he's
because
immortal.
He's immortal.
The only way that breaks apart. The only way that breaks apart is that they say in the movie that his dad died, and if his dad drank from the
crossed the line that you're not supposed to cross, and Indy didn't. So his dad got healed, but broke the spell of it, whereas Indy did not.
Okay, I really like
fan theory that I'm like.
I really like that, what? Actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring that up to my coworkers tomorrow who always complain about the fridge scene and say it's completely bonkers, insane, ridiculous.
I mean, verify it through watching that last scene again, of course.
I'm going to. That would be an easy out for that. Because that is one of the most discussed scenes, honestly, in movie history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because people used to talk about those fridges. I mean, to me, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke because people acted like those fridges were actually strong enough to do that.
I mean, I was even looking at some trivia. Like Back to the Future was originally going to involve a fridge as the time machine, right? And there was actually an early draft. I read an early draft of the script where there was actual nuclear bomb, and one of the characters actually hopped into the fridge and survived by jumping into the fridge. So the idea has been around for a while.
Yeah. So to me, it's one of those things where it's like this tongue-in-cheek poking fun at this joke that these fridges would survive and be something you can hide in if there was a nuclear bomb. Because you got to realize, people don't seem to realize the propaganda that the government fed people back in the 60s and 70s and 50s and I would say still feed the people now, but then you get labeled as something when you say that, because they literally told the public to duck and cover if they see a flash of a nuclear bomb. They made it seem like they taught school children to hide under their desks and they would be fine if a nuclear bomb went off. Yeah, but the government literally told people that they could hide under their desks and survive a nuclear bomb, which we all know now is complete BS.
Yeah.
So telling people that fridges would help them, all these different things to give people this false sense of security. I think that's what the whole point of the fridge was. It was a joke to play on what was told about back then.
Because you see people comment all the time. They're like, why would you include this atrociously stupid scene into this movie? How could they possibly have arrived at this in the final draft of the script? But I think you're right. It was meant to be I remember seeing that and laughing and thinking that, okay, that's funny. I didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, I get it was when I went back and okay, I can see why people would think it's crazy when I consider the rest of the movie, but that scene in itself didn't make me go, oh, I'm snapped out of reality now. Swinging on vines like Tarzan did.
Right. Tarzan Shia.
The fact that Shia LaBeouf was even in this movie actually made me not want to like it. I don't
see. For me, I'm a big Shia LaBeouf fan, so it's probably. Why? Oh yeah, I just something about him. I grew up watching. I liked Holes. Some of his early movies.
Even Stevens.
Yeah, even Stevens. Disturbia. I like the movie Disturbia. That's what really launched his career. So that's when he got attached to Spielberg, and then Transformers. The first couple of Transformers, I honestly like with him in it, and
Stuttering Stanley.
There's just something about him. I do actually like. I think he's an underrated actor, but. Yeah, after this movie, he apparently kind of had a falling out with Spielberg because he trashed the movie about 2 years after the release, and yeah.
We probably won't be seeing him in the 5th one.
Probably not. No.
I don't even know if there is a Mutt character. And I would have to look that up. I would actually have to look it up to see.
I really doubt it.
Will Mutt be in Indiana Jones 5?
I really, really doubt it.
Shia LaBeouf is certainly not coming back.
Yeah.
Mutt Williams will not be in the movie.
Okay.
Obviously. I mean, they could recast, but okay, so we already got to some of my negative points about it. Like
you did.
The special effects at certain points. The weakness. I mean, the villains don't really seem to be that strong of villains. They don't really even seem that scary to me.
Kate Blanchett,
they never seem like they're in real danger. I'm Kate Blanchett. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you actually thought, wait, will Indy survive this? He's actually in danger here. Granted, he comes up with inventive ways to get rid of people who vastly outdo him, but I don't feel like we see the ingenious, quick thinking, get out of tough situations Indy in this movie.
Yeah. I can see
the character is a little older, a little not wiser, just older and worn down. And I don't want to see that. I want to see someone who's older. Sure, I don't care if they're older, but show me them thinking more to get out of the situation. You know what I mean? Because when you're older, you can't do the physical stuff as much, so you have to think faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all the more reason to pull out your gun and shoot the guy with his scimitars.
Right.
All the more reason to come up with certain things. Those things were amazing, inventive ways that Indiana Jones stood out as a character. And here, I just don't feel like we see it. I also feel like they kind of betray the character by bringing back the love interest from the first movie. Because instead of having a new love interest in this, like he's had in every other movie, he has to go back and revisit something that he's never had to revisit before. So, I mean, I guess it could be, hey, it's something new that for Indy, but I feel like they didn't bring any of the other characters. Obviously, they couldn't because some of the actors had died, but Brody, they treat Oxley as if he is Brody, and Brody isn't there. You know what I mean? Brody from the first and the third movies, you know who that is. I mean, the actor died in 92, so obviously he couldn't come back, but he was a character that I thought brought a lot to the Indiana Jones character. And then the other one who's missing is John Rhys Davies, with his character. It's like, okay, if you want another Indiana Jones movie with these characters from his past, don't give me new characters and say, oh, they're from his past. Show us the other characters. Get the other. I mean, obviously they couldn't bring Brody back. The actor's dead.
He's dead.
But John Rhys Davies is still alive.
They did apparently offer him a cameo, but it was just a cameo, and he wanted to be more than just a cameo.
Yeah, why would you want to be just a cameo in this movie?
Yeah.
So I just felt like it was too much new, which I'm hoping, not hoping. Yeah, I guess I would be hoping. I'm hoping that Indiana Jones is similar to having the Star Trek curse, where Star Trek, they say only the even-numbered movies are good. Okay?
Yeah.
Whereas Indiana Jones would be only the odd-numbered movies are good.
Right.
So, because 1 is really good. 3 is really good. I can say that 1, I mean, Temple of Doom is weak. I don't know where I would place it versus Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, though. To me, they're both kind of...
2 just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's off on his own. There's no one from the first movie and the second movie besides himself.
Yeah.
He's completely off on his own on this very random quest.
I think if the third movie, if The Last Crusade didn't exist, then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull would be much more Indiana Jones-esque. But since you have 1 and 3, which are connected by so many similar characters, it ends up being like, okay, 1 and 3 make the standard, but now you have 2 and 4, which are like throwing this whole thing off, you know, because they both basically
Right.
have Indiana Jones with no real backup, no similar characters that we know. And like the plot just seems, I mean, yeah, they're going after this MacGuffin. There's a MacGuffin and all that, but it just seems like the motivation just isn't there. It's like they want it, but no one can actually say why.
It's a very mysterious artifact, and ultimately, like it's a crystal skull. It's not as interesting or exciting as the Ark of the Covenant or even the the Holy Grail. And
I
because
think what this movie could have used was a good marketing campaign to explain what the crystal skulls were ahead of time, so that people would be like, "Oh yeah, that's interesting." You know, like now you would have a viral marketing campaign. Like you could do fake episodes, you know, snippets of fake episodes from like TV shows talking about this, you know, like Discovery Channel shows and stuff like that. Obviously not from the movie because the movie takes place in the past, you know, but
right,
if they could throw that out there just to be like, hey, wait, is this thing real? What is this? You know, there's ways to me that they could have educated the people, because I mean, in the Western world, it's fairly easy. Ark of the Covenant, you know, is known pretty much at that time when that movie came out, at least in the 80s. It was known because there were big expeditions that actually went looking for it, and because a vast majority of the Western world was Christianized at that time. And same thing with the Holy Grail, you know, like there were literally crusades where people went looking for this thing. So it's a big part of history. Whereas
right.
when you're picking on this random thing that Joseph Stalin did that no one really knows about, it just makes it a little weaker.
Yeah. I do like, there is kind of a little bit of both ways. I do like they have the whole mystery aspect of it because we don't know what its full powers are. We don't know, you know, that's kind of interesting, but I do agree the other side also, like you need to know a little more rather than just coming up with a...
Yeah, you don't need to know what its full powers are, but you need to know that, like, what expectation is there around this thing, or how valuable is this thing really? You know, if someone found the Ark of the Covenant today, everyone knows, oh man, that'd be like a big deal.
Right.
But if someone found a crystal skull now, I'd be like, oh, did you buy that at Comic-Con?
Yeah. You're right. One other thing I wanted to say about the fridge scene is that while it's totally ridiculous, you know, and everything, the final shot of that scene where Indiana Jones is standing in front of a mushroom cloud, how has that shot how has it not become iconic? You know, I just think that's a fantastic shot. He's got the hat, he's got the I think the whip.
You should make a meme.
I really should
make a meme for it and be like, real men walk away from their explosions, because I've seen that meme before.
Oh, okay.
Real men walk away from their explosions, and then they show like different, you know, movie scenes.
Yeah.
You know, with people standing, walking as something blows up behind them, but like you need to do it in ascending order of crazy explosion, and then end with Indiana Jones being like, yes, the ultimate action hero.
The ultimate, because it's just a great shot. That mushroom cloud in the background, it just, oh, I love that shot.
You should make that meme and post it with this episode.
Yeah, I think I just will. One other action sequence I just wanted to call out was the car chase scene right after the diner scene. You know, where they're being chased by the spies or the Soviet agents. That's a great action sequence, right? I mean, there's even some launch shots. I love the shot where Harrison Ford, or it's probably a stunt double, where he crawls out of the car onto the motorcycle. I mean, that's you expect a cut to be there, but there's not a cut there. He just flat out hops from the car to a motorcycle mid motion. I mean, stuff like that. Like that's a good solid action sequence. I love that. You know, there's not, like you were saying, not everything about this movie is actually terrible. I think people want this movie to actually be worse than what it actually is. I think that's what I'm trying to say here. I like that they, yeah, I don't think it's, you know, this isn't I don't know what to compare it to. You know, think about whatever the worst sequel you think is all time. This is not even close to up there. I think this is it not a great sequel? Maybe, perhaps, but it's not atrociously unwatchable. Like, after watching this, I was like, I could watch this movie again. Like, it's a rewatchable movie. I think it's thoroughly entertaining still. You know,
So I love me some terrible sequels. I think Blade Trinity is amazing.
Yeah.
You
I
ever see those
honestly,
movies?
I have not seen any of those
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan Reynolds. They bring Ryan Reynolds in that movie,
Okay.
and he has this one line in there, which is just like a terrible, terrible line.
Yeah.
But I've been known to use that line because
Okay.
it's just so hilarious and terrible.
I know he makes fun of it in Deadpool, so I thought there had to be something about those movies.
They were trying to do a spin-off series with that movie. Like they're trying to do what Marvel is doing now with those movies, you know. So they brought in 2 characters from other comics, you know, who have assisted Blade before, and they're kind of trying to do a spin-off series. They're planning to do a spin-off series with Jessica Biel's character and Ryan Reynolds' character, and it just didn't take.
Yeah.
They just didn't have. I don't know. Each Blade movie is, to me, a slightly different genre. They're not really like the first Blade movie is kind of like a straight up horror with a twist. You know, there's a lot of blood, a lot of gore, a lot of that ancient vampire type thing.
Yeah.
And then the second one gets into the more like action modern vampire. You know, because they put together because the thing in that movie is that there are now vampires to the vampires. You know, so there's these things hunting the vampires the way vampires hunt humans. So the vampires turn to Blade to get help from him to hunt down these vampire hunters, basically. Which I thought was kind of a nice twist. And then the third one is just, I don't know. They like kill everyone off in the beginning, and then he has to assemble a new team, and it's just like it's punctuated with so much humor. It's similar to me. Your complaints about like Thor, where you had 2 serious movies, and then throw Ryan Reynolds in the third movie and have him just be himself, you know, like so it just comes off a lot different. I enjoyed it because I like Ryan Reynolds. I liked Jessica Biel, but I can see why people don't like it as much.
Yeah. The point I just kind of want to end with before we get to some trivia here is that, you know, ultimately the Indiana Jones franchise from the very beginning has been filled with supernatural and/or extraordinary events and plot points, and Crystal Skull is no different. Yeah, it's no different. You know, I mean, you can argue all day about the aliens or the fridge scene, but we discussed the fridge scene and the absurdity of it, but the fact that it was intentionally, I think, made to be a joke and something that was an idea that's been discussed for decades, and so they put it into the movie and everything with the aliens. You know, this is not something that's actually insanely far out. But
I mean, each of his movies has the beginning starting off with him escaping from something in a very crazy fashion. You know,
right? That's true.
So you have, I mean, Last Crusade. He ends up jumping off the side of a boat in the middle of a hurricane. Like, how are you supposed to survive that? You know, like that doesn't make sense either. But so that's what each movie does. I mean, he's running from that giant. I think
the
that's
boulder
that
in the first movie.
Of Doom. Was that in the first movie, or was that?
The boulder was the first movie where he runs that was the first one. Okay, I honestly forget how I forget how the second one actually starts out. Temple of Doom. It's been so long since I've seen it.
A bunch of natives in that one. That's how the first one begins. I remember him running away from
because they're shooting like poison darts at him and everything.
Yeah, and
he has to get to the artifact that he's trying to get. He has to go through a bunch of booby traps to go and get them. But yeah, so we'll jump into some trivia here. We talked about a lot of the CGI in this movie. Apparently, Paramount wanted his whip in this movie to be computer generated. I'm not kidding. And Indiana Jones Harrison Ford was adamant that he wanted to actually wield the real whip, and I applaud him for that because that's insane. We got a CGI whip, really? So yeah, I'm glad that
they're probably thinking you can't actually wield a whip.
His age.
It's probably someone who just thinks like a whip isn't actually a real thing that could be handled. And the reality is, if you're someone who's dealt with a whip before, you know that there's actually an art form to handling it, and it is, I don't know if I'd say a legit weapon. I mean, they did some fun stuff with the whip in Rundown. If you ever saw that movie with The Rock in it.
Did not.
The
No, I heard
villains
it.
in that used whips, like all of them, and it was just like surprising. But
yeah.
anyways, I could see why they would suggest that as a producer who they just don't know anything about whips, so they assume you need a CGI one.
Yeah. But, also, apparently, Harrison Ford convinced the writer David Coep to include more jokes about Indy's age in the script, believing they would help reduce the, quote, American paranoia about aging. And he also refused to dye his hair for the role because he argued that Indy's appeal wasn't in his youth, but in his imagination and resourcefulness. He quoted, "My ambition in action is to have the audience look straight in my face and not the back of a stuntman's head. I hope to continue that no matter how old I get." And also, what a really cool thing is Harrison Ford kept himself in such good shape over the years that he actually fit in the exact same costume that he wore in Last Crusade for this movie. I thought that was very impressive.
Yeah, that's impressive. So,
yeah,
American what of aging?
American paranoia about aging. It would help reduce the American paranoia about aging. Because apparently Americans, we don't like. I mean, it is very, very true. There's always, as you age. I mean, commercials are constantly advertising for make your skin look younger. Look like you're 20 in your 40s. There is a paranoia. In other cultures, it's actually you're revered when you're older, but in here, it's it's the other way around.
Okay.
Youth is celebrated, not being older. Yeah. Also, this was interesting. So the girl in the diner scene where Matt Williams, they start that big fight with everyone. Mm-hmm. The girl that punches Shia LaBeouf is Sasha Spielberg, the daughter of Steven Spielberg, and Kate Capshaw, who played Willie, his love interest from Temple of Doom. I didn't even know he had a daughter or a daughter from Willie, but apparently he does. So I found that interesting.
Steven Spielberg has a daughter.
Spielberg. Yeah. You will like this. The Akator throne room that was designed by Guy Hendricks Diaz keeps an Indiana Jones tradition by having C3PO and R2D2 etched into one of the yellow titles and ET into another. Apparently the characters can be found in all 4 Indiana Jones movies. I don't know the locations of the other ones, but they're in there somewhere. Yeah. Because, George Lucas, Star Wars, including Star Wars artifacts in there.
He's a little obsessed.
We were talking about Indiana Jones and his pistol. This is the only movie in the franchise he does not fire his gun once. Some people have
I guess he was like more anti-gun now that he's older or something like that. So he didn't want to use
that was also one of the complaints a lot of people have. They're like, he doesn't even fire his gun in this movie. I don't have a huge problem with it. If he didn't use his whip at all, I'd have a huge problem with that. But his gun, I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with that. But
yeah, I mean, that one scene is just so iconic where he shoots the guy with the gun with the swords, which just makes sense. Why would you even risk your life fighting someone who has swords like that when you have a gun? If you didn't have a gun, then fine, fight them.
Do what you got to do.
But what was it? Because I don't feel like he's really known for shooting his gun.
Yeah,
like, that's the only scene that I think of where Indiana Jones uses his gun. Whereas the other movies, he's fighting a guy on a bridge who's trying to tear his heart out.
Yeah, usually it's
the giant Nazi guy with the plane. Yeah,
right.
And the third one.
It's usually hand-to-hand combat that he's fighting. All the punches, and it's usually hand-to-hand. It's not even usually with guns.
Or he's like on a car and they're trying to pin him against something. Like the car chases.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like whip, car chases. Inside some artifact thing, which is just dangerous, and no one else realizes the danger except him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which reminded me when you brought up the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You do know how that was brought about with him killing the swordsman, because Harrison Ford was actually had pneumonia that day shooting, and he was actually like scripted to fight the guy, but then he suggested to Spielberg, "What if I just shoot him?" You know, and that's how that moment came to be. It's pretty cool. Yeah, that is actually.
That's what I love about movies, though. They're so collaborative. You know what I mean? Like, you just try something out. Hey, this doesn't quite work. I don't think this really fits this character. And you have everyone working together. It's just, to me, that's just so much.
It's a team
fun.
effort.
That's the fun of like. I read. Well, not read. I'm doing it because I'm driving an hour to work and sometimes 2 hours back at night because of traffic. So I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, and I went through. Matthew McConaughey just came out with a book like this year or last year or something like that called Green Lights. And he talks about getting into his characters and the process of it. And I was just like, wow, I don't think I would have thought he put that much thought into these foolish, terrible characters that he did early on in his career. But the fact that he did that helped inform his later characters, you know? And he got so into it. And he was able to make suggestions and be like, hey, this isn't what this character would do. And I don't know.
Because that's something that you can be a brilliant screenwriter. You can be a brilliant screenwriter, but sometimes you're not going to have all the ideas, and you can get some great ideas from other minds. You know, that's one of the collaboration is such a huge part of filmmaking, and so I think it's really cool when it really comes together like that. So, yeah. That is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You can let us know what you think of the movie. Is it the worst in the franchise? Or is it the second worst in the franchise? Or is it actually one of your more favorites in the franchise? Hey, you never know. But
the worst or second worst?
Is it the worst or second worst? Or it could be your favorite. There's no judgments here if it's your favorite. You know, please come tell us. And
there's definitely judgments here. If it's
is there some judgments?
Oh, there's definitely some judgments here.
Oh, yeah, Indiana Jones 4. But hey, you know what? With the fifth one, I'm anxious to see where this one ranks when the fifth one does come out. Will the fifth one actually be better, or would it actually be worse than Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom? We'll have to see. We'll be 80 years old, folks. 80 years old. Oh, I can't wrap my head around that. But
so next week. Toy Story 2.
Next Toy Story 2, yes.
Another sequel.
See, what was the other animated movie we did this season? Didn't we do, let's see here, Shrek.
We did Shrek.
So Shrek would have been our last. No, we did also Treasure
Planet.
Yeah. Oh, and Monsters, Inc.
Monsters, Inc.
We've done several.
We had a lot more animated this season.
Yeah.
A lot more superheroes. We just kind of leaned into the superhero thing this season.
Right.
We allowed it to happen.
Mm-hmm. We did.
Stop being so stingy about what we would do. X-Men Last Stand. For now, that's still on Disney Plus.
Okay. Let's hope it's Disney Plus. Oh, right, because they got Fox. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, let's hope it stays there. It should stay there. Yeah.
Spider-Man Homecoming is not on Disney Plus, though, just so you know.
So, right.
It's owned by Sony.
Right.
So I own it on digital download, so I'm not worried about it, but I don't know where you're going to
I may actually have a digital copy of that. I kind of share my digital copies with a former college roommate, actually. So I think I actually may have that access to that on digital. So, yeah.
Cool. Wow.
Alrighty.
We went longer than I expected tonight.
We did, but
I need to sleep.
All right. Have a good night, some sleep. Working long hours. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching this episode of Buddy Movies. If you like what you saw, you can click up here for more episodes. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to get the access to all of our latest episodes. And if you really like what you see, you can support us on patreon.com/buddymovies. Thanks for watching, and stay cool.